Yo, internet! Welcome back. Today we have the Fusion in the air, actually for the first time since getting into the shop space. And what we're doing today, something that is going to be a little controversial, and at least in the fact that people are going to wonder why I'm doing this, and especially with looking at it at a face value. But let me explain my thought process and why I'm doing what I'm doing with the transmission swap in this application and why it makes sense to me. All right, this is probably the first time I've been able to stand under the Fusion. So far I've gotten one exhaust clamp off. We're gonna get the wide pipe off of here. And as the title states, we are getting rid of this TR6060. Might be asking yourself, why the French toast would you get rid of one of the most sought after, like, OEM plus durable transmissions? Well, this thing not only has had a second gear synchro issue for probably the better part of 2 years, the ratios are so freaking long that I use maybe second and third gear. The rest of the gears never get used unless I'm just bombing around in pits and want low RPM or going down the road for a quick hit. But even with a 409 rear end gear set I put in here a long time ago, it's just too tall. So I am putting a Gen 2 MT82 in there. So that's from a 15 to 17 S550 GT. Doing a little research before doing that. They have a little better internals. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure I read that it was some of the shift fork tips, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm gonna convert this one to 11 to 14 flange, which are like, they're discontinued. So I got these used, different cross member that'll still bolt up to my nut certs, and the shift assembly I'm gonna have to do a little adapting compared to what the 6060 stock shifter is. That's the stock MT82 shifter, and bolts and all that good stuff. So the major parts that I have to change besides the transmission are, I need to get a different clutch kit. That's gonna be here in a couple days. And then of course the drive shaft. Drive shaft is a one piece with the slip yoke. It does look like it's on the bottom half of, or bottom portion of it being in all the way. And when I did a quick measurement from flange to bell housing, or flange to bell housing, comparing the two transmissions, there's a 2-inch difference. So I want to see how far that thing engages, and if we can extend it 2 inches, perfect. Otherwise I got to get basically a whole new tube, either locally or just have full torque drive shafts. I don't know if there's stickers on here yet. Nope, it's not, but that's who built this drive shaft back in 2018, and it's been great ever since. I ordered it online. You give them measurements and what flanges you have. If you need a slip yoke, fixed yoke, whatever, and they'll set you up, and it fit perfect. And there was one other thing. This transmission does have a throw bearing, but I'm going to replace it. The throw bearings are different between the MT2 and the TR6060. Just looking at the part numbers and visually online, this is obviously a Tremec transmission, so it's that's one reason it's different. But this seems also much shorter. So yeah, we're gonna replace the clutch with another XZD system and the cross member, because this has more of a direct transmission mount where the MT82 bolts further behind, and I just placed that cross member near it, and you can tell that even though that transmission is shorter flange to flange, the cross member mounting bolts are actually further back. Get this exhaust pipe down, get the starter out, and the drive shaft out, and then we'll probably pick up when this thing's coming out and put it back in. I don't know if you guys remember in the build or not, but I did have access panels when I first built this trans tunnel. But looking at it here, there's plenty of room, just like even in a Mustang. Don't mind the missing bell housing bolt to get to all the bell housings. She's still warm. I did a little rip before bringing her in. But yeah, let's get this thing apart. And so, yeah, let me explain also why I'm doing this. You may have mentioned that this thing has long legs. It can only do second and third gear, but it also just made it feel so slow out of the hole. Because first gear it's a supercar transmission that's boosted. And you pair these, basically it's Magnum T56 type gearing, even with 409s, the thing, and a Coyote that needs it rev high, it just hasn't worked as well as I'd hope. And this car only gets drifted at the track, so it's been a long time coming to get this sorted out. And after having an MT82 in that 08 swap car that I set the record of Coyote swapping, that car had 331s and felt like a car that had like a TR6060 with 410s, which I do have. And like, I can't imagine what, you know, if you gear that thing down with an MT82 with the earlier one, the 11 to 17 MT82 has the nice close ratios where fifth is 1-to-1 and only one overdrive. I can't imagine what it's like if that thing is geared down. It'll be perfect for the track. And that way, if I get to bigger tracks or tracks where I'm like in between gears, it'll be less of an issue. And my only other option before I decided to just jump to get an MT82 is put a quick change in the rear end. Well, we're looking at probably all in all at least $3 or $4 grand, if not more. Modify the subframe, get a quick change, and all that good stuff, but maybe in the future. So we're gonna get this thing apart, and then I need to borrow my buddy Paco's from 2F Performance transmission jack to get this thing out of here nice and safe, because getting too old to be bench pressing these things out of here. You like the HY pipe, I know you love it. So yeah, let's get this thing apart, get that trans out of here, and then once it's out, we'll compare the two. All right, got most of the goodies out, and just need to undo the clutch line, which is definitely inconvenient from what you're used to seeing on Mustangs, and the light is flashing like crazy. Let's get that thing off. Oh, it's not even that light. It's my dumb headlight. All right. So exhaust is off. That's my clutch line. Nice hard line because this is a custom setup. Starter is out, obviously exhaust out, drive shaft is out, but let me share with you what I found. Not gonna be able to use this yoke. That's actually the rear. Is this diameter here, this locating diameter, is a lot smaller than either one of these. Well, this one actually doesn't have one because they use a Guibo, but then that diameter, so I'll have to get at least the front flange for that. This does extend quite a bit. So we were sitting, I would say right about there. Maybe yeah, you can kind of see where it was hanging out, but it does extend out a lot. So we might be able to get the length out of this thing safely. Now I just need to undo that clutch line and do the bell housing bolts, and this 6060 will come out. Oh, and the shift linkage is absolutely, completely different. Only reason that worries me is because of how up top I have it mounted, and the room for this big honking MT82 shifter might be in for a lot more work than I bargained for in that department. Next clip will be when I get this thing out, get the transmission side by side, and see what we're dealing with more. If there's any more hurdles we gotta jump over. All right. 6060 is out. I can't even remember if I put a twin disc in this thing or not, but I guess 2018 we opted for the lighter XCD flywheel as well. So it'll be another day before we get the GT clutch, because this is a 26 spline. MT82 uses 23, and of course the appropriate pressure plate. I did look at the throw-up bearing. It did look, when the new one comes in, I'll compare it, because this does look long like the regular GT one, but the part numbers didn't cross-reference, and if you'll notice, I'll probably transfer that line to the new one as well. All right, got the 6060 out, like I said, got the MT82 on the bench next to it. I already swapped the flange, pretty straightforward there. As you can see, the MT82 a little bit shorter. Not very confident that that drive shaft is going to extend enough to make up the difference, but do want to go over the differences here. Like I said, the part numbers are different. They might look similar. That's the original one. I'd be more apt to use that than the 6060 one, just because the part numbers are different, but I will use the line that I made because I put a flare nut on there so I could, because this is a custom setup instead of the quick disconnect like you see on the OEM Mustangs. But I was kind of surprised at like how chunky the MT82 is compared to the 6060, and you can see the differences in the shift linkage, which I'm kind of dreading on where that's going to end up because that ball's way down there. This one's more on top, so I might have to do some work to my trans tunnel that I built long ago. So just going to be waiting on the clutch. This thing is definitely seen some days, some good track days and drifting. So clutch kit for the GT will be here tomorrow. So we'll get that thing in there the next clip. Got the flywheel back in there. Actually had the pins, 2 out of 3 of the locating pins on the flywheel broke off, taking it out. I don't know if they were stressed or what, or because I let it hang, but I didn't think that would, I've never had that happen. So got those swapped on the flywheel, and yeah, so we'll get this thing back in there and see what it all looks like. And of course, past me, I had the original cross member. It has like a stamped arrow pointing front on which way it's supposed to be installed, and of course it was installed backwards. So it'll be interesting to see if the cross member does line up once we get that thing back in on the MT82. All right, it's been a couple days. Got the new exited clutch kit pressure plate there, and to my surprise, I got the puck style. Yeah! I can't recall. I was kind of ordering this in a frenzy so to get in here in time. But looking at the part numbers, this casting number is not the same as that one is actually, but is the same, but it's also got a machined there where the cast number is there for the Ford number. So this tells me that Exited is like an OEM type supplier. So we're definitely gonna use this and transfer that line. And of course, get the clutch, pressure plate and clutch put in the car itself. All right, got the clutch and pressure plate in. I did reference the pressure plate had the same exact part number that came out. So it leads me to believe that, you know, where the Tremec and Get Reg had the same depth, like from here to where the throwout bearing mounts is the same. I'm still gonna use the one that came in the kit and transfer that line. Yes. And then, yeah, then once we transfer that line, that thing will bleed the master, or the slave cylinder first. Always remember to do that. And I'll show you how to do that again in case you forgot. And then we'll get this mixer back in. All right, got the line transferred over. I had bolted it in with the line loose and then tighten it so I could get the right line and orientation, because I didn't want to bleed this, then put the line on, because then you'd have air in that line. Any little bit will help when you bleed this thing, even though this is the fastest bleeding. The last time I bled this clutch was when I first built the car, and it took like only 2 pumps. For whatever reason, OEM stuff takes 452. Anyway, so get your favorite brake clean or brake fluid in there and just pump it to get all the bubbles out. Nice and slow, and then it'll suck it back in and make sure that thing doesn't come out. Push it down again. Basically until you stop seeing bubbles come out, it should be good to go. Still saw a little bit there. You can see it took a little bit of fluid too. Now that might have been just fluid kind of rushing out of there quickly. But basically just do that and you'll be so much more further ahead than if you don't do this and put it back in. All right, new slave is on with the modified line. I capped that just to mitigate any air and spillage going in there. So don't want to push that. It will get pushed obviously when you're installing the transmission, which is fine because hopefully you get in the first crack and then it'll just push fluid out the line, make a little bit of a mess, but it won't allow any air in. So now ready to put this pig in there, and the only thing I'm still having question marks on is the shifter stuff like stated before, and of course if the drive shaft will reach. I did get the spicer, so we'll swap that out and see how short it is, and trying to get this done for our next week event in Vegas. So chances are I might have to get the drive shaft lengthened, or basically they'll just make a new one with that section. So let's get it back in there and see what we're dealing with. All right, MT82 is in. I only got 2 bell housing bolts in, but I can raise the lift to be higher and get some more stuff done. Bell housing bolts, I don't know what I was using before, but they are, it seems like the flange is a lot longer on the MT82. So I'll have to get maybe get a few more, but oh, look at that beauty. Whoops. Guess I didn't need that anyway. Next thing, it's a race car, right? All right, I think you know what I'm going to talk about here. This thing came up way short as far as getting the original nutserts in there, so I'm going to have to do some magic with that, unfortunately. So I'll probably at least get nutserts in the rear, and then probably have to weld out a little box in there to put a nut, encapsulate it, so I can bolt into it. And just putting up there, drive shaft, even at full extension, is still a couple inches short. So even more neat stuff. All right. You can call it being lazy, or maybe just working with what you got so that you don't have to bust out the metal gluer. Let me show you a solution I came up with. After playing with the MT82 crossmember, I realized why I mounted this backwards, because right at the frame rail, right at the, not this front, but this is actually with the front, the frame rail or exhaust tunnel from the factory curves up, and so that's why I placed this backwards. I was like, oh, it's symmetrical. So but it still wasn't reaching, but I've seen how offset the TR6060 crossmember is, because I'm sure they were using the same nutserts locations, which made sense. And there was already a couple holes in here. I widened them out, clearance this out just a little bit. I'm feeling with the factory mount, this is going to be plenty strong. This actually looks a lot stronger than the MT82 mount overall. And put it in here. But not only that, I did, it was still coming up short when I was playing with it. So what I'm going to do is put some spacers in here, 1 inch exactly, with a little longer bolts, and then it'll work with a lot less effort. Now you can razz on me if you think that's a little shade tree or whatever, but I think it's going to work fine, especially since the motor mount is rubber, and I feel like the MT82 rubber mount is a little less rigid than the Tremec one. So kind of an elegant solution there, and I'm going to have to shape just a little bit. No, I think I'll be able to tighten those down. I was going to have to take a little off the flange, but they're just going to fit, and then I'll place this in here and double check the spacer management, and I'll show you that once I get it mocked up. Hey, it turns out my math is terrible. It butted up perfectly, and those are lining up just dandy. So no spacers are needed, a little less jank. Problem I didn't see though, now that it's all bolted up, this is a little higher. And looking at it back from it's gonna be a little tight, but I think it'll still work. Just gotta double check. I have the flange here. Obviously it looks like it'll clear. So I don't think it'll be an issue. I do still want to double check the angles. All right, we're back on top of things, and with this big old shifter, it is a lot clunkier, bulkier than the 6060 shifter. None of that is fitting through that slot that I made specifically for that shifter back 7+ years ago. So basically gonna take my little buddy there and take this bar out. We'll still have the panel to cover that. And then I got to take this pedestal off and kind of make some nuts and bolts through the tunnel to get that mounted, and that should be about it. I think it'll be a lot simpler than I thought. So gonna lop that off now and see what we're dealing with fully. All right, shifter is in. I used a little janky, but one of those little ditties on the existing pedestal needed to be raised up a little bit to clear that mechanism, but it's pretty solid, ain't gonna lie. Not sure if I'll keep the boot or not. What's under here? Yeah, we'll keep the boot on there. We'll clean this thing up so it can match the rest of this pile. And I'm pretty sure that the cover will go over it just fine. I'm just gonna deburr the ends there that got lopped off, and it'll be good. Even got to reuse my shift knob. So after reviewing my less than stellar crossmember, I decided to take Polycam app and scan the crossmember here so that I can make one with Oshcut. And you can see the scan here in Fusion 360, and whipped up a little ditty there with the sheet metal, and there it is. And just like that, a few days later, we got ourselves our own crossmember so that I can replace the abomination that I made here with more hose clamps, but that was just there to affix it there in the time being. So gonna slap that in, drive shafts in and modified, got that extended to the 62 inches that I needed from flange to flange. So I'm gonna throw the cross member in, throw the drive shaft in, and we can party again. Just like that, first shot, so cool. Oshcut coming in for the clinch. Much better than what contraptions I had. But yeah, I use Oshcut a lot. And did a quick 3D scan as you saw, whipped it up in Fusion, and now we got a custom cross member for this Fusion here that no one else will use. So let's get the drive shaft in there and see if this thing still parties. So Phoenix Rack and Axle, Phoenix Rack and Axle did this drive shaft in under a day. They retubed it, super cool. And it was only like 300 bucks for them to retube it, because obviously you can't extend the current tube, so they just lopped it off, added the longer tube. I told them the length between the flanges I needed, and they made it happen. So I got already put on the new flange. So now for the real test, to see if they followed instructions or not. See if this thing still fits. All right, drive shaft is in, not fully bolted yet. I realized two things. I forgot to put my safety loop in, it's sitting over there. But just wanted to show you how well it fit. It was like fully depressed, and now it moved maybe an inch. So they nailed it. And they even put their sticker on here if you guys are wondering. In the local Phoenix area, Phoenix Rack and Axle. So take it back out, see if I can't sneak that safety loop on there. It should all bolt up in the same with the brackets that came with it. That's just a standard S197 safety loop. Always a good idea to have, especially in a custom setup. So get that all bolted in there, and yeah, super sweet. All right, drive shafts in, safety loops in, all bolted up, Loctite. Time to get this old gal down and take it to Mexico. Transmission, but I think there's something going on with the linkage, or maybe the mounts are just a little too mushy. I can nail second if I'm like more gentle with it. I'm not sure, but this thing feels so much faster with just a gearing change. Like it's really sweet. I'm really pumped with that, but we just got to dial in the shifter. I think that'll cover this video, and yeah, I'm a little miffed about that shifter thing, but I am pumped about how proper that thing puts you back, like I've been feeling in customers' cars with MT82s and an NA2 and Coyote. So give that thumbs up, please consider subscribing. We'll see you next time.